Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Sunrise Beach Bike, and I'm going to be sipping on some Pinot Grigio. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you'll find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so what I'm going to be using for my materials today is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, fluorescent orange, Mars black, raw sienna, which I'm just going to call yellow. This is green oxide, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, and this is cobalt blue. And of course you can switch up those colors, but that's what I'll be using. I have a 7-inch paper plate that I'll also be using to draw a circle later. And I have some brushes as my tools. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush. And as I go through the painting process, I will refer to these as small, medium, and large. And of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas even to the fancy paper plate. So that's down there for you. And there's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large brush, and the colors that I'm using are orange, yellow, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to be occupying about 1/4 of my canvas with my sky. It's obviously going to be at the top quarter that I'm using. And I am imagining this to be a morning sunrise type sky where we're not really going to see the sun, but it is going to give you the essence of a morning sky where it's kind of almost pinkish yellow at the bottom of the sky, and then it's getting into the bluer area up towards the top. And I'm going to have it the lightest over on the left, implying that the sun is rising over from the left. So what I'm going to first do is I'm putting a little bit of orange, yellow, and white on my brush at the same time. So I have very little bit of all 3 of those colors on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to mark 1/4 of the way down my canvas. So to find that, you can visually kind of find your halfway point, and then about halfway between there and the top of your canvas is going to be about the 1/4 way mark. You can use your brush as a measuring tool to figure out how far down you just came and mark it with your finger, and then come over to the other side and make yourself a mark at about the same height. So as I do this, I'm actually going to be starting at the bottom of my sky and working my way up. I have those 3 colors, orange, yellow, and white, on my brush at the same time. I'm going to first do a horizon line, but I'm not terribly concerned about it being super straight because we'll be able to make it straighter when we do our water. So I'm just going to kind of give myself a loose kind of line connecting my 2 dots in through here. And then I know that I want my sky to be a little bit darker on this right hand side, so I'm going to elevate those morning glow kind of colors and make them a bit darker over here. And again, I'm using my orange, yellow, and white on my brush right now, and as I move towards this left hand side, I'm picking up white and with my dirty brush, and I'm not picking up any more of the yellow and the orange, and it's going to get naturally lighter and lighter as it comes over to this left hand side. I'm using a left to right kind of crisscross type motion I do want this sky to be a little bit darker and more dramatic over here on this right hand side, so I just added a bit more of my yellow and orange and white, and maybe yours ends up a little bit more yellow than mine, or a little bit less pink than mine, or a little bit more pink than mine. However yours ends up is totally okay, because there are no two skies alike in this world, so you can completely have yours whatever intensity that you would like. And as I move up towards the top of my sky, I'm going to start picking up a tiny bit of blue. And I indicate a tiny bit because if I were to have a lot of yellow on my brush right now and I picked up a bunch of blue, I'd end up with a big green sky, and I don't want a big green sky. So I'm just going to start cautiously with a little bit of blue. I'm over here on this right hand side, and I'm going to get my pinkish type sky to blend in with my blue sky that is emerging or showing its beautiful morning face up above that I would call it the morning glow at the bottom of the horizon here. And then I'm just getting it to go a little bit darker as it goes up towards the top of my canvas. So I'm using a little bit more blue as I go up there. And because I'm using this left to right kind of crisscross type brush stroke, this is going to almost give you the illusion of these light floaty clouds that are making their way through that morning atmosphere. But you could certainly use whatever brush stroke that you would like. If you want to use circles or dots or whatever is comfortable for you, that's totally fine. And again, I'm making it as light as I can over here on this left-hand side just to insinuate that the morning sun is making its way through the sky from the left. And then we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful sky all nice in place, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our water. We're going to be using our large brush, and the colors we're using are brown, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to give you a couple of markers so we can do a horizon line, and we'll also give you a couple of markers so we can separate our water from our land. And when we go to paint our water in, we're just going to be doing the gradient of sorts from dark water up at the top to light water down at the bottom. We'll be putting waves and movement into our water later. So right now we're just going to kind of give it a base coat. So right now I'm going to put blue and a little bit of white on my brush at the same time. And I don't have much paint on my brush because we're going to be doing just a little bit of an outline. So I just want to show you, got just a little bit of blue and a little bit of white. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to make myself a couple of markers for my horizon. So I know I need my horizon line to be within my paint. So I don't want to put my horizon line down here. It has to be up where there's paint. So I'm going to look for where what I see to be is the highest point of unpainted canvas, and that's like right in these two spots. So this one's nice and close to the edge, so I'm going to make myself a dot at that highest point where I don't see any paint, and I'm going to use my brush as a measuring tool, and then I'm going to come to the left-hand side and put myself a marker at the same height. So for me, it's pretty much even from left to right. So those are my two markers. And then I'm going to make myself two more markers. One is going to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from this one. So I've got a marker in through there. And then on the bottom right-hand side of my canvas, I'm going to come up maybe almost halfway or a little bit more, I mean a quarter way or a little bit more than a quarter way up the canvas. So if this is about your halfway point of your canvas, this is about quarter. I'm a little bit higher than that, so somewhere in through this vicinity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two bottom dots with a very light kind of sketcherly line. This is going to be the separating line for the land versus the water. So I'm going to have this one kind of just coming over here a little bit and just kind of sloping down. And right, I would say almost at the midway point in your canvas is where I'm going to kind of almost level it off to bring it into that area. And you can see I'm hardly touching my canvas because I don't want a big solid line that's going to be difficult to paint over later. So now that I've got that in there, now I'm going to connect these two markers. I just want to double check these. One feels like it's a little bit lower than the other one to me. Yeah, this one. So for me, I'm looking at this and it almost doesn't look straight for me. So I saw that this one was here and I came to here and it's actually lower. So I need to move that right one up a little bit. I just noticed that it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. So maybe something like that. I think I'm right. I'm using my fancy measuring tool and it's not always 100% accurate. So now what I'm doing is I'm loading my brush with blue and brown paint on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to connect my two dots. So my Virgo is coming out of me right now. You guys are witnessing it right as we're speaking. All right, so I'm going to get these two to connect. And for me, when I'm doing these kind of horizon lines, I like to keep my eye on the prize, which is the other marker, and I'm pushing the tip of my brush into my canvas. So what's happening is it's forcing it to be nice and firm, and it's providing me with a pretty darn straight line, at least visually for me to be happy with. You could certainly, like I said, you could use a ruler or you can use painter's tape or whatever you feel is necessary to get yourself a nice straight line, and then you just kind of sit here and make any adjustments that you need. It's pretty good for me to be happy with it. And then what I'm going to do, I started with blue and brown on my brush with whatever little remnants of white that I had from that original outline. Now as I come down my water, I'm continuing to pick up just blue and brown for a little while. I'm using a left to right brush stroke, and I'm conscious about staying left to right. I don't really want to go diagonal. I don't want to paint around this hill. I want to paint into this hill in a left to right brush stroke. Now what I'm going to start to do is I'm start to pick up a little bit of white within my mixture, and this is going to get this to have or create a gradient of sorts, which means it'll be darker at the top of my water and it's going to get a little bit lighter as it comes down towards that land. And I just continue to use this left to right brush stroke, and you can almost go like in a figure eight kind of brush stroke motion if you want there to be a little bit more movement in the water, or you can just go left to right. So wherever your visual preference is totally fine, but if you can get it to go a little bit lighter as it comes down towards that water, that's going to make it look nice and natural. So once you've got your water on here, we will be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just kind of fiddle with your water and make it as light and as dark as you want it to be, with as much movement as you want it, but just know we will definitely be adding waves and other, dimensional elements to it later. So if it's not as wiggly as you want it right now, you can certainly know that we will have the opportunity to put that movement into it in a later step. So I am going to take my large brush, wash it and dry it, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our sand. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, white, and yellow. And I might use a little black too if I feel like I want any of my sand to go a little on the grayer side. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have two sections of sand. I'm going to have a section of sand that is down below where the water meets, and then I'm going to have my big section of sand kind of in the upper sand dune of sorts. So I'm going to start with the one that is in the, let's do the bottom one first. So we're going to do the bottom one first. I'm going to have the sand down in the bottom is going to be a little bit lighter, so it looks like it's being hit quicker with that sunshine. So I'm going to be using white, brown, and yellow to make myself a little bit of a beach sand type color. So you can mix it right in, wherever you have, or you can mix it in a separate area. So I'm going to make mine in a little bit separate of an area, and I'm adding just a tiny bit of yellow and a tiny bit of brown because I know that I want this sand to be on the lighter side because it's going to be down by the ocean, and I feel like I want it to be the lightest down in through there. So just adding, kind of making a light tan type color. And I do want it to be darker than white, so I want to just make sure that I've got it into a region where I feel that it is darker than white. It will turn a little bit darker as it dries, but when it's wet, it will look pretty light. But you can certainly kind of use your best judgment as to how dark that you want it. You can always make it darker too. So that's about where I'm going with my light tan sand color. And I'm just going to kind of give myself a separate area in through here. So somewhere, I would say right around here is where I'm going to kind of separate it. And I'm just going to kind of give myself a little bit of an area that is going to be down by the beach. This is going to be my other sand. So once I've got my designated area, I'm just going to paint in the area, but you can use a texture type brush stroke. So I can use a circular type brush stroke. I could use dots, whatever you want to make it look nice and uniform with its texture is great. And then when you get to the water area, this is where we're going to start to intermingle it with the water a bit. So I'm just kind of getting it to blend in with that water area just a bit. We're going to add the waves on in a future step, but this is just going to kind of get it to start to intermingle a little bit with that water. So I'm just lightly kind of brushing it over into the water a little bit. And if you have some wet areas within your water right now that are merging into your sand, that's okay too. So just know that if that happens, it's all right because I've planned for that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this whole area in through here. So this is going to be what I'm going to call a cooler kind of tan. So I want this to look more like it's in the shadows. So I want this to have a little bit less yellow in it. So I'm just going to take what I have here and I'm going to add a bit more brown to it and a little bit of white. So what's going to happen is it's going to turn a little bit more muted and not as sunshiny as the stuff that we have down in through here. So that's about where I'm taking. I just added a little bit of brown and white to it to dull it down a little bit. And then as I do this larger area, I know that I want, and you could probably see if I put these two colors right next to each other, this one's similar but a little bit more on the browner side. So I'm going to use, you can use a circular or a dotting type technique, whatever you'd like to get it on here. But I am going to add a little bit of a textural type look to it by adding lightness and darkness to it as well. So I'm just taking this main color and putting it in the main mid section of it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of darkness down at the bottom by just picking up a tiny bit of either black or brown on your dirty brush. And you can start to just manipulate some darker toned areas down at this bottom area of the sand. And it doesn't have to be really super dark. I'm picking up some brown right now. It can just be something that looks a little bit darker than that main sectioned area. And that's going to help to give the illusion of us kind of coming up over the sand dune hill. And then once you've got that area a little bit darker than the midsection. Of course, you want it to kind of blend in a little bit, so you can just keep maneuvering your brush. I'm just kind of wiggling it in like the circular type motion. And then as I work my way up towards the top of that hill, I'm going to be using this tan plus white on my brush at the same time. And that's going to get the sand to go lighter and lighter as it goes up towards the edge. And then when I get to the edge, I'm just picking up white on my dirty brush, and that's going to get it to go really nice and light up at the edge. And you want to make sure that you get all the way where it's touching the water and you don't have any space between the water and your sand dune that makes it look like that it's unpainted. and I'm using this lighter white type color as I come in through this area in through here, and this is going to help us decipher the hill sand dune versus the beach. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sand dune and your beachy area in, you can wash and dry this large brush. And of course you can keep fiddling with yours as I'm fiddling with mine, but you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our water and this little beachy area. We're going to be having our waves kind of come crashing or rolling into our beach. I am going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm using are predominantly white, but I will probably also use a little bit of my sand color, whichever sand color is available, and some of my watercolor as well. So blue, brown, white, and maybe a little of my sand color as well. So for me, creating these type of waves that are just kind of rolling into the sand is a fun process because you get to kind of be carefree and have them go as prominent or as subtle as you want. I'm going to have mine kind of coming in this direction, and I do like them to cross over into my sand. So as I'm doing it, I will be carrying some of the sand color into the water and the watercolor into the sand. I do recommend that you have your canvas dry before you start this step. So you could certainly, take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you could, pick up your paper towel and fan it or blow on it to, get it to dry that way. Or you could do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So whatever way works for you, that what I would definitely recommend. So I'm using a firm bristle brush for me because I like to move the paint as it's drying and give myself kind of these gradients as it goes from the water to the white cap. So I'm going to start with a very little bit of paint on my brush, and I use what I'll refer to as kind of like a dry brush technique. My brush is pretty dry and I'm hardly using any paint, and I use that to control the intensity or the volume of the paint as I go. When I do my waves, I hold my brush in a weird way. I hold it like this and I kind of push that paint so it has a firm edge here and it's subtle as it goes into the actual water itself. So this is just my little strange technique that I use. It helps me to build these waves in a pretty natural kind of looking way, but I try not to be too systematic. I don't want every single wave to be exactly the same width or the same curve or the same distance. I also think in my head as I'm doing this, I think kind of like spider webby things where they all connect in their own special way. And I'm gonna have them traveling out into the ocean, but I hardly have any paint on my brush. If you feel like you have too much paint on your brush or it's not giving you the gradient, you can always, I just picked up a tiny bit of water on my brush, and this will help me to get a little bit more of a gradient going throughout from the darker part of the water into that light edge that I want to happen. And as it goes out further into the ocean, it might just be little tiny specks throughout, adding these little tiny visual kind of light spots throughout the ocean as it goes farther away. And then once I've got all of my kind of white caps, so to speak, I want some more coming in through here. Once I've got as many of these as I want, then I'm going to start to just really intermingle it with the surrounding water, or sand. So that's looking pretty good to me. I feel like they're coming in at a good kind of angle. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of my beach sand, make sure that this is intermingling with my water nicely along the edges. So I just picked up a bit of the beach sand, getting this to make sure that it blends in with that water. And of course, you might want yours to go a little bit further out than mine. If you've done too much, again, you can pick up some of your water color, which would be your blue, or you could pick up some more, you know, tone down the sand a little bit. Whatever works for you is totally fine by me. And then once they're talking to each other, I think actually I'm going to pull in a little bit of the blue in through here, just to make it look like there's a little bit of some wet sand going in through here. Once I've done that, then I add what I call the shadow underneath the wave. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue and brown on my brush, and wherever this white cap is, if you add a little bit of darkness underneath it, that's going to make it look like it has more volume to it. And you don't have to do it to all of them, and you don't have to do it at a really intense way. You don't have to go black. You don't have to make it look really, really dark. Just something that's going to say, ooh, there's some height to that wave, and it's going to give it a little bit of a shadow. You can even do it with a little bit of brown on your brush when you go into the sand area. I'm actually going to wash my brush and put a little bit of brown on my brush so you can see what I'm talking about in through here. So if you add that bit of darkness underneath the ones coming into the sand area, that also is going to add a little bit more intensity on it, or volume to it. I just added a bit more brown in through here, and going to get some of this sand to look like it's wet, that the water has receded and it has wet all the sand that is along the beach edge. And you know, you can certainly keep tweaking it as much as you want to. I just kind of keep adding these little bits of layers to make sure that it feels realistic to me. And you can of course step back from yours, and sometimes when you're looking at it from a distance, that helps to see it a little bit better. And then we're going to actually be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your beautiful white caps crashing into your morning beach area, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting an umbrella on our beach. So I really like to have my paintings with a lot of perspective in it, and I want you to feel like you're ready to ride your bike down this sand dune and just park your butt on that beach for a beautiful summer day. So I want to give you the impression that somebody beat you to it or you went down there and put your umbrella down there earlier. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to pre-mix myself a custom color for the umbrella. You can certainly use whatever color you'd like, but I wanted mine to be pretty complementary to the rest of the painting. So I'm making myself a peach color for my umbrella. So I took, this is the color right in through here that I've made. I took a little bit of my yellow, a little bit of my orange, and some of my white, and just spun it together until I found a color that was very appealing to my eye. So once you've got the color that you like, what I'm going to do is just draw a shape for the umbrella. We'll color that in, we'll put a couple of details on it, and we'll call it done. So I'm going to have mine in through here. It's going to be coming out of the sand in through here, so I'm just going to have it a little bit at an angle, maybe something like this, and yours can go off the edge of the canvas, maybe one more little hump there, and then I'm just going to kind of give it this arc over the top and color it in with my peach type color, my beach peach color. And then once I've got it all colored in, I'm going to let this peach base kind of sit for a second while I go and do my, I need a pole on my umbrella, so I'm going to wash and dry my little brush, and I'm going to use brown paint. Oh, I never told you what colors I'm using for this step. I'm using yellow, orange, white, brown, maybe a little black too. But right now I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm putting some brown paint on it, and I'm giving myself a little pole that I feel would look kind of natural. I think we'll go somewhere, I guess it's going to come somewhere in through here and get it to land in my sand and then go straight up to the top of it with just a little bit of brown on my brush. And you want the top to be in line with the pole that's in the ground. So something like this. My sun is over on the left-hand side, so if you wanted to, you could certainly put a little bit of a shadow like this, just going off into the distance or hiding behind this little hill under here would be totally fine. And if you feel like you needed anything, any little modifications with some extra sand down there or something, you can totally do that. Or a little black would give you some more dimension on the post itself. So however detailed you want to get that is totally fine. And then I'm going to put some details on the top of my umbrella. So I just washed and dried my brush. I'm going to go for first off the highlight on the top of it. So I just added white to my brush. I've got my sun rising over on the left hand side, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of a highlight there. Wipe my brush off on my paper towel and then just kind of get that highlight to blend in with the actual umbrella part itself with that peachy color. And then I'm going to do some decorative kind of decorations on it. So I just took white paint and I'm going to have like a little kind of stripe along the bottom edge or near the bottom edge. And you can do polka dots. Maybe I'll do some polka dots that just give it a little bit more decoration. But again, you could totally do whatever you'd like to make yours as fancy as you want. It's going to be hidden behind a whole bunch of other elements too, so I wouldn't spend too much time on it. I'm going to put a little highlight at the tip of this as well. And then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your umbrella all nice and secured in your sand, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting ourselves some wild beach grass. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are black, brown, green, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is, again, I want this to have a lot of perspective, so I'm going to be doing kind of sections of grass that are going to lead the viewer down this path and through here. So what I'm going to direct you into doing right now is we're going to put kind of place markers where we're going to have our areas of grass within the sand dune. So I'm going to put some brown paint on my brush, and I know that I'm going to have my path is going to come down in through here, and it's kind of going to come down into this area in through here. So I'm going to designate this area as a little bit of a grassy area that's going to be almost on the other side of the sand dune. So I'm just going to kind of pull myself up a couple of little pieces of grass. And I'm not doing anything fancy to start this. This is just kind of giving us an idea of where we want all of these little pieces to go. And then I'm going to have this next area. This is going to be the left-hand side of the path of sorts. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a little bit of a designation in through here. I know that I want this left-hand side to be about halfway between the top of my sand dune and down here. So somewhere around here, this kind of has to make sense and connect with this area in through here. So I'm just making myself a really kind of messy line of sorts. This might end up being kind of the bottom of the ground near the fence, and then I'm just going to kind of give myself a couple of little areas that are going to be where I'm going to have the longer pieces of grass by this fence line that we're going to be putting in there later. So again, I'm just using brown paint right now to designate where I want these bunches of grass. This just kind of gave me a connector to know where I wanted this one in through here. And I want my grass to be on the shorter side, the farther away that it goes, and on the longer side, the closer it gets to me. So I'm going to have another kind of area of grass up at the top of my sand dune. So this is going to be, these are going to be much more, they're going to have much more volume to them once we put the other colors on them. But right now I'm just kind of giving you areas where we're going to start them. And then over on the right hand side, I'm going to have a big section of grass that's going to be below my canvas that's going to rise up into the sky. So this is going to be the area that's the closest to us. So I'm going to bring this area of grass all the way over past this marker here. So I'm going to find that marker and go a little bit to the left of that. And then I'm just going to kind of give myself an area where I want this grassy stuff to emerge from. So now that I've got my designated areas, now I need to make my grass grow. So how do you make your grass grow? I make my grass grow with paint. So I'm going to put some, I didn't wash my brush, I'm going to pick up some green and a little bit of black paint. What I'm in essence going to do is build my grass from dark to light, and I'm starting with dark paint being the green and the black. So again, I've designated all of my grassy areas, and I don't want to overwhelm it with black, but there's got to be some shadows or some silhouetted pieces. So that's why I'm using green and black on my brush at the same time. So I found this piece of area, and I'm just making it a little bit thicker down at the bottom, and then pulling some pieces up a little bit taller. And then I'm going to come on over in through here and do the same thing. I'm not covering up all of that brown paint, but I am in fact just making this resemble kind of wild kind of beach grass, which tends to be on the longer side, and it can get really, really tall if you want it to. So feel free to make some of these really kind of tall. I've got them, going past that area where you can see the water itself in through here. These ones are going to be pretty darn tall. I want them to be take up a good amount of the canvas, so I'm going to get these ones to come up even into my sky so you can see them that way. If you feel that you want yours to be longer and skinnier and have more kind of direction to them, you may want to use a little bit more paint on your brush, or utilize a skinnier brush if you want your pieces to be on the skinnier side. I do like to have a lot of volume within my wild grass, but I don't want it so much so that you can't detect what's going on behind it. These type of grass can also have these almost the appearance of little wheat edges to them. So if you want to push your brush towards the end of them, you can give the illusion of that thick piece of kind of wheat style grass that tends to grow by the ocean a lot. So feel free to have fun with those little pieces if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and do this same process throughout all of the areas that I designated as the grassy areas. Right now, again, I'm still just using green and black on my brush, and you can see I'm being very carefree with how I create these pieces of grass. I want them to be darker, a lot darker at the bottom. As I go towards the lighter colors, you'll see that I'm going to be making my pieces of grass longer and giving these areas of grass a little bit more volume as I get towards the lighter pieces. But right now, again, I'm still just kind of building where I want them to go, and you can have some overlapping in this front area, of course, because this is going to be the area that's the closest to us. We're going to have fences in front of it and all that good stuff. As I start building these ones over up into the right hand side, I am conscious that I have an umbrella that I don't want to totally hide. I am also going to have a little fence that I'm going to be putting in through there, so you might end up at some point tweaking those couple of elements if you get too excited and make your grass too invasive, I guess. But I do have some of my pieces of grass obviously coming out over into the ocean, and again, you can have yours encapsulating this little private oasis as much as you want to. Now I'm picking up green and yellow, so I did not wash my brush. I'm moving into my lighter kind of colors of my grass, and I'm just really adding bits of these lighter type pieces throughout here. I will be adding white in a minute to get those extra highlighted pieces in there, but right now, again, I'm just gradually working my way towards the light grass. So green and yellow is where I am right now on my brush. And again, you don't have to make every piece of grass look exactly like the one that it was in front of. These are wild beach grass, so they can lean over in front of one another. Some can be much more wild and carefree than others. Because I didn't wash my brush, all of my pieces of grass seem to be talking nicely together. Of course, they can be tall. They can look like they've been struck by the wind a lot. You can really have as much fun with this as you want to. If you want there to be a different shade of green, you can certainly pre-mix yourself a different tone of green if you wanted to, but right now I'm just using green and yellow on my brush at the same time. I'm using this raw sienna type yellow, which is a very natural type of color, so it really helps to make it look like it's that long kind of so at times seemingly dry beach grass. So you can really have fun with this, and some pieces can be thick, some pieces can be thin, whatever is visually appealing to you. And then I just have the white or the lightest pieces that I'm going to add in a second here. But you can see I'm just really having fun letting my umbrella still kind of show a little bit, but being hidden by a little bit of grass. And now I'm going ahead and adding yellow and white onto my brush, and I might slow down just a little bit when I go to add these lighter pieces to make sure that I've got as much dimension on them as I want. And you can, again, make this as bright as you want, but what I do recommend is while you're doing it, think of where that light source is coming from, and it's coming from over there. So I don't necessarily need all of this grass down and through here to be super bright. I would definitely see some bright pieces obviously up and through here. This would catch some of the edges of the sun from the other side, but you can have fun. I suppose you could even add some of the peach or the orange and yellow into your grass if you wanted to. So you can certainly have some fun with that. I'm going to add some of my lighter pieces in through here. I know this area is going to be hidden by a big bike, so I am paying attention to it, but I'm not spending too much time on it. So when you're doing these types of paintings, those are the things that you can think of too. What area do I need to pay attention to, but I don't necessarily need to put as much detail into? And that's one of those areas that I know is going to be have some other information. I think I want a couple extra pieces in through here, and then some lighter pieces over here. And then, yeah, see, when I get to these highlight pieces, they make me, my painterly eye, the happiest. And I'm putting these over on the left-hand side just to kind of give, again, the idea that the light source is coming from over there. And if I wanted some of those little wheat pieces, I suppose I could just kind of add a couple of those with just pushing my brush in a dotting type of technique in through here. But again, that would be something that you could play with, and then you just kind of adjust it as much as you want. If you want some lighter or darker pieces, just keep going into those paints and adjusting it as much as you want. And then we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your beautiful grass in throughout the sand dunes, you can put this large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing our fence wire or connector, whatever you'd like to call it, for your fence posts. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint, but I will be watering down my black paint a little bit so it's nice and fluid in motion. So I've got my small brush. I am adding a couple of drops to some of my black paint so I can make it like a nice thin consistency, so I can have a nice skinny line when I go to do this. And I also take my brush and I will spin it on the side of my palette within that paint, and it's going to make my brush nice and pointy. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers. Your fence posts and the wires don't have to be in exactly the same place as mine. I'm making mine really just a old rickety kind of well, I don't know if it's fragile, but a fence that's been there for a really long time and has been weathered by many years of the ocean breeze. So I'm going to have mine not straight. It's going to be not straight. So I want my fence is going to be, I'm having my fence coming down along here, and it's going to wrap around in through here, and then I'm going to have it in through this vicinity as well. Again, I want it to look smaller as it goes far away and larger as it comes towards me. So I'm going to, in this area, I'm going to make myself 4 dots. This is where the entry down into the beach is. So I'm going to make a dot in through here, in through here. I've got one here and one here. So these are maybe about 2 to 3 inches apart from each other, and maybe, I don't know, 1/2 of an inch to an inch above the separation line. And then over on the right hand side, I'm going to be making myself 3 more markers. I've got a marker in through here, a marker in through here. So this is a little bit almost where my beach meets my water, and in through here. And then I've got one about halfway between here and the bottom of my canvas, right on this piece of grass, which makes it very easy for you to see. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start connecting a couple of these dots. I'm going to connect these top 2 to these bottom 2. And again, I'm not concerned about it being a straight line. I'm actually purposely making it into a wobbly kind of line. I'm going right in front of my umbrella because that's what it do. The umbrella is on the other side of the fence. I'm going to connect these 2 with, again, a nice wobbly line in through here. And then what I'm going to do, I've got another, I'm going to make another one in through here. I guess I probably should have given you this marker. So it's going to be a little bit to the left of these 2, maybe by about, I don't know, almost to the halfway point. And then you just kind of come straight down and maybe about 1.5 inches away from the bottom of your canvas. This one's going to connect to this one. And again, just black paint. And if you run through wet grass, don't worry about it. Just kind of get it to blend in, or just paint right over it. Something like that will totally work. And then over on the left-hand side of your canvas, we got to make the 2 opposing markers for this one. We're going to make them over in through this area. So I've got mine maybe about at the halfway point of my canvas, somewhere in through there. And then this one is just above this grassy area, so maybe somewhere in through here. And then I'm just going to connect the top one with the top one here and the bottom one with the bottom one here. And again, doesn't have to be a straight line. It's not going to be. I don't want it to be. And I'm using my watered down black paint, and I'm getting my line to just kind of follow the the way that I feel the hill would work its way down. And because these 2 are closer than these 2, it's naturally going to end up looking like it's getting closer to us, because the line is getting wider and wider as it comes up this beach area. And then we are going to switch brushes to our medium brush. So as soon as you get your fence wire or connectors done, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our fence posts. I'm using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are black, brown, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with my smaller posts, which are the ones that are going to be the farthest away, and work my way towards the closer posts. The closer posts are going to be larger. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to start by just painting them with brown and a little bit of black on my brush at the same time. I'm using both these colors on my brush at the same time so I can have a good dimensional element to it. We're going to paint them all with that color, and then I'll come back and swipe a nice quick highlight on top of them. So I have brown and black on my brush, and these are going to just again be kind of rickety, and they don't all have to be straight. I'm going to make some small ones down in through here. So brown and black are what's the colors that are on my brush right now. And of course you can have the tops pointy, or they can be a little bit on the rounder side, whatever works for you. Of course, I'm putting this right in front of my beautiful umbrella. I'll do it to the side so maybe you can still see that little separation point of the pole that we had on our umbrella. So something like this, we've got those on there. And then of course you don't have to do exactly the same number as I'm doing. Then I'm just reloading my brush with brown and black, and I'm going to go ahead and do these ones over on this left hand side. And they would theoretically get larger as they come closer towards the viewer. So that's going to be, as they come toward this left hand side, they're going to get a little bit larger. On this third post here, this one is going to be my beach sign. So this post right here, I'm going to make even taller. So I'm going to make this one probably, I'm going to say maybe about this tall. And I'm going to put a rectangle on the top of it. This is going to indicate to the beach goer the correct direction they need to travel to go get to that oasis down below. So something like this. Of course, you could have your little sign saying whatever you want, but I might just go for the beach is down there type sign. So again, I'm just going to continue making my posts. I'm using black and brown, so some of them are going to be lighter and darker than the other ones. And then as I get closer to me on the left-hand side, I'm going to start making them a little bit wider and maybe a little bit taller. You can see I've got mine not perfectly straight. Some of them, most of them are just leaning in whatever direction I want them to lean. They don't have to be, again, perfect. I'm making them different colors. So, you know, one of them's got more black in it. One of them's got more brown in it. They're not totally equally spaced apart. So you can really, again, have some fun with it. I suppose they would, you know, seemingly look like they're a little bit closer together down, you know, the farther away that they get, but you can certainly, I think I'm going to add a couple more down in through here. Yeah, that looks better to me. And then I'm gonna maybe one more over here too. And then I'm gonna go ahead. I have this close area right in through here. This is gonna be the biggest ones. So again, just brown and black on my brush right now. This one I'm not gonna have blocking the view of here, but it's gonna be pretty wide. It's probably like twice as wide as the ones over there. So you can tell that it's really nice and close to us. And then I've got another one maybe coming in through here. And I only did one connector wire to give the illusion that the rest of the fence is down below. And you can certainly have some of these go in front of that back smaller fence. That again is going to add a great illusional element to it. Like these are really close, they're really in front. You know, they're really, that other fence is down lower on the dune. And once you've got them in place, now what I'm going to do is start picking them up on my dirty brush, just a bit of white paint. And you could do this with tan, you could do it with white, you could really do it with whatever color you want. And I'm adding a bit of a highlight on the side where the sun for me is, which is on the left-hand side. And these front ones could in essence be a little bit brighter because they, in theory, are much closer to the sun than these ones back here. So you can certainly use your best judgment as to how light or dark you want them. And I'm getting that white to kind of blend in with the rest of the fence, so it's almost like a little gradual transition into the dark. I suppose you could use, you know, white with a touch of brown if you felt that it was a bit too bright. And again, I'm still keeping this highlight on the left hand side, even as I'm going on these fence posts that are on the left hand side here, because my light source remains in the same spot. So again, I'm just kind of swiping a little highlight down at the sign. I'm going to do a little highlight on the top and on the left, something like that. And I just kind of keep reloading my brush. If I feel that the white goes too white, then I'll pick up a little bit of brown on my brush at the same time. I really just want this to give the illusion that maybe they are in fact light or gray type posts, but they are in the shadow, they've been weathered, they've got some, you know, some divots in them here and there, so you can really get them to be, you know, as as gritty looking as you want and have them have as much texture on them as you want, but starting with that darker base and just coming through with this kind of a light swipe down on that highlighted side really helps to give you a nice natural type look. I'm not really concerned about the bottom yet. We're going to be adding a shadow in a future step to sell that story, so I'm not really concerned about the bottom yet on that. So now I'm going on the left hand side of these posts with my white, and if you need again a little bit of brown, you can totally add that in there and just kind of swiping it down. And if you feel like you went too bright, feel free to bring back some of the black, even on these especially on these ones that are far away from the beach itself. They could certainly be a little bit darker. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this your fence posts all nice and finished, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the shadows of the fence on the sand and finishing the sand if there's any little touch-ups. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm using black and white paint plus water to create this shadow. So for me, in my beach dune days experience, they're all ruffled. All of the sand has footprints in it and bite prints in it, and it's got lots of lumps and bumps to it. So I'm going to try and emulate that by telling the viewer what's happening with the sand by my shadows. So I'm going to take a little bit of brown, a little bit of black, and I'm dipping my brush into water. So I have a watered down version of black and white. And it's smarter, in my opinion, to err on the side of caution when doing this kind of shadowy type effect, because it is much easier to add more paint as opposed to taking paint off. So if you have less paint on your brush, you can certainly control what you're doing a little bit better. So of course I want to have a shadow at the bottom of my fence. My light source is over there. So I'm taking my watered down black and brown paint and just kind of rubbing it at the bottom of my fence, something in like this. And then I have shadows of my fence posts coming in through here, and I want it to look like they have some wiggle to them because they are being the shadow is being manipulated by the bumps within the sand. This one is going to be longer because it is the sign, so I'm going to just kind of bring that one all the way across my water or my sand. And then I have these shorter ones. If my light is over here, they're going to be at an angle to the right like this. And I'm just going to keep going until I have as many in through here as I want. Again, I have, maybe some of them are a little bit longer because the sand is smoother or something. I have the bicycle that is going to also be adding a lot of information into this area of the painting, so I'm not terribly concerned how perfect these look. I'm just really trying to give the viewer the information that the light source is in fact over on the left hand side, and the sand is lumpy and bumpy. And then if you wanted to, you could certainly do any other modifications to your sand. You could bring some of your sand color back in through any areas that you feel might want a little lighter lump or bump, or if you brought your shadow too far, you can certainly just bring some of that sand color back in. If you wanted there to be, it to be darker down in through here, now's the time to make any adjustments to your sand that you feel you might want. And then we're going to use, what are we going to use for our next step? We're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows on your sand and any little adjustments that you feel that you may want to make, you can put your medium brush away wherever you'd like to, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing our beach sign. So I'm using my small brush. You could really use whatever colors that you would like to paint this with, but I'm gonna use some of that peach color and white and maybe a little bit of black as well. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm using my small brush too. I'm taking the peach color and I am just kind of doing some little accents of sorts on it. You can think of this as maybe it was once painted with this beautiful peach color and some of the paint has chipped off throughout the years. So you can really have fun with however you would like this to look. And then I'm gonna write my word with peach, with the peach color. I'm gonna write beach with peach and try not to stumble as I say both of those words next to each other. And I'm gonna try and fit all of my letters on here. So I might go a little bit slower just to make sure that I don't misspell the word beach, because I have done that once or twice in my painting days. As fun of a way as you want. Now let's just make sure I can spell it correctly. Impress. You would think that I would have pre-done this or had a little cheat sheet right next to me so I didn't misspell any of these words, but we'll hope that I do it right. Impressionism. I think I got it. I think I did it. There we go. I'm just using little block letters, like somebody hand wrote this themselves or carved these letters into this wood sign. And while that's kind of drying, I'm gonna wash and dry my brush and put in a little cute arrow on the side of the sign, kind of pointing in the direction of the beach, as if somebody couldn't figure that out on their own. They need this directional arrow to tell them exactly where it is, along with the word beach. So it's very obvious what's going down this hill. And then I'm just wiping my brush off, picking up a little bit of white and making a little highlighted color on top. Oops, I need a little bit more white so you can see it. Little highlight in through here. And then I'm going to use a touch of white paint to highlight my letters, to highlight the word beach. So you can certainly, of course, you could do whatever you wanted. I'm just using a bit of white on the edge of my brush so I can still see some of that original peach color underneath it. And then we are going to be using our, we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your wooden beach sign done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm painting the tire for my bicycle. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using black and white paint and my fancy paper plate that I have, so I can get a nice semi-circle. So what I'm going to do is I want my circle to be kind of off of my canvas a little bit. So I am going to take my canvas and kind of slide it to the edge of my easel, so that way I can overlap my my paper plate a little bit. I'm going to have my paper plate maybe about 3.5 inches away from the edge of my canvas, and I'm just leaving a little bit of it overlapping because I want my bicycle to look like it is kind of coming into view. I'm using my small brush and I'm using watered down black paint to make the outline of my tire. So I'm just kind of riding my brush along the edge of my paper plate so I can have a nice circle. And it may not turn out perfect, which is totally fine. This at least gets you started in the right vicinity. But if you can have your bristles kind of just ride along the edge of your paper plate, that kind of gives you a better shot of it being a little bit more circular. And of course you could use a pencil if you wanted to. Then I'm just going to remove this and I'm going to put my canvas back in place. I'm going to still be using my small brush and watered down paint, and I'm going to thicken this line up to be, I would say, maybe almost 1/2 of an inch. So I'm using a good amount of paint and I'm just pushing my brush pretty darn hard into the canvas because I'm using a smaller brush, so I have the ability of pushing it pretty hard, which allows me to get a pretty symmetrical line as I'm going through this around this circle in through here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, when these tires get all dirty and weathered, they might end up looking like they've got a little bit of wobbliness around the edges, so I wouldn't be terribly concerned if it was super duper perfect, but you might need yours to be more perfect than mine. I don't typically need anything in my paintings to be too perfect, so I'm just going to kind of keep continuing on around here. And then once I've got the black area done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an interior line right next to it, about the same with white, but I'm not going to wash my brush. So I'm using white and black on my brush at the same time, so it's going to look like the little white, the interior white wall of the tires, only maybe a little dirtier. So I've got black and white on my brush, and I'm going to have this about the same width as the black area. And if you bump into a little bit of the black area along the way, it's all right. Just kind of work, work with it. It doesn't, again, have to be perfect. I'm just going for something that is representational of the style of bike that sits in my garage all winter long. Mine definitely is a beach style bike with a big, huge cruise, like big flat seat that's so comfortable to ride on. It's got big tall handlebars, and it sits in my garage all winter long, and then I take it out in the springtime. Not as many times as I would like to, but take it out in the springtime for some nice, rides in the fresh air with my doggies. So I'm just kind of imagining mine to be similar, my bicycle that I'm painting to be similar to the one that sits in my garage all winter long. And then once I've got those white area done, you can wash and dry the brush. What I'm doing is I'm going to do some spokes on the middle of it. So I'm using very watered down black paint. So it will have some translucency to it, and it's not ever going to be too dark. You could use black and white if you wanted to. I'm going to just eyeball where I feel that the center of the tire is, and then make sure I have a good amount of water on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of pull out these spokes, and you can have them. I feel like it's a little bit too dark. I'm going to add a little bit of white paint to it because I don't want it to be too noticeable or too overpowering. So right now I have watered down black and white paint on my brush, and I'm just doing these diagonal lines from that center area that I designated, and I'm just going to kind of make as many of them as I want. I don't want them to be too overbearing or too take away the look of it too much, but I do want you to know that they're there. So I know that they're very, very skinny, so you can certainly, and they would come on both sides of the tire because they have, some on both sides from that little center area. So if they don't look exactly spaced evenly, that's okay, because maybe we're seeing some from the other side. That works as well. And then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your tire and your spokes done, you can wash or put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of the blue parts of our bicycle. So I'm using my medium brush, and I'm pre-mixing myself a light beachy blue color. So what I did was I've already pre-mixed it, but I want to show you how I got there. So this is the color that I'm going for. I took some of my blue, my cobalt blue, and I added a little bit of yellow to it and a little bit of white to it and just spun it around. So what this did was it made it more on the greenish side, and it made it like a nice soft blue that's going to be really complementary to my to the rest of the painting. So once you've got the color blue that you would like, and maybe you want a purple bicycle, you can certainly have whatever color bicycle that you would like. So again, I'm using my medium brush. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put an interior colored part on my tire. So I'm using my medium brush. I suppose you could use your small brush for this line if you wanted to. And then I'm just making myself interior line in through here. You can have it skinnier or wider than the actual tire itself. It's all going to be a visual preference. This is just the metal part that holds the tire onto the bicycle. So again, you can have yours as skinny or as wide as you want. Sometimes if you're using a bigger brush, as I am, like I feel like my brush is a little bit overloaded from mixing my paint, so I'm actually going to wash and dry my brush because I feel that the bristles are overloaded with paint, so I can't get the thin line that I want, but I still want to use this brush, so I'm washing and drying it, and that's going to make my brush back skinny again. So that's just a little experience tip that I can offer to you. So now that I've got it back nice and skinny again, now I can go ahead and get this line in the width that I want, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring it all the way around on the right hand side. And then once I've got this interior line to the bicycle, I'm going to make the brace part that will connect the tire to the regular part of the bicycle, so we can actually have a place for the person to ride if they so choose. And you can see as I'm getting towards this bottom that there might be an area, I think this blue might just connect to make it look like it's still going round and round. So now that I've got that, I need to make myself a brace from the tire up to where the handlebars are going to be. So I know that it's going to start in the center right in through here, and I've got mine going to be coming somewhere up in through here where the handlebars are going to start. So I'm going to have it diagonal, and I'm going to have it at a little bit of an additional angle in through here. So I'm bringing it something like this for maybe about 2 inches, and then I'm going to change my angle a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit straighter in through here. So I've got just a little bit of an angle coming in this vicinity. And you can have yours, I've got mine maybe almost 1/2 inch wide. If you go through wet black paint, as I just did in my tire, it's all right. I'm going to make this a little bit wider up at the top, just to, because that's, I think, what my bicycle does, and it's going right in front of the tire. And again, your lines don't have to be perfect at this point because we are going to be doing a little bit of highlights and shadows and some additional details, so don't fuss too much with the lines at this point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a place that's going to go off into the left-hand side, the frame of the bike. So I've got 2 pieces coming off. This is going to represent a girl bike. Sorry, all the boys who are watching this. This is going to dip down in through here as opposed to going straight across. So it's my female beach bike, so that's the one that I'm painting. So I'm going to do a couple of markers in through here. This one goes about halfway up the tire. That's going to be in through here. And then this one is going to be almost at the height of the top of the tire in through here, something like that. I have to put the, I don't know what it's called, the protector thing along the outside of the tire too. I could have done that before this brace part, but we'll do that in a minute. So once I've got these 2 markers in through here, I'm going to have this top part come, this is going to be maybe about 1 inch wide in through here, and then it's going to come over like this and then scoop down like this. And this one's going to be pretty wide at the top, so you can make it, like I said, maybe about 1 inch wide up at this top portion. And I'm using a good amount of paint on my brush just to make sure that I get good coverage in through here, and then just making it a little bit more narrow as it comes off the canvas on this left-hand side. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my second brace to my frame. This one's going to be maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch below the top one. It's going to be a little bit skinnier here than this one is. And of course, I'm just guiding you into the shape of my kind of bicycle, but you can certainly have fun and build yours whatever way that you would like to. And then once I've got this on here, then I'm going to go ahead and do the, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. the fender. Phew, that's what it is. The little fender that's going to go on top of the bike, on top of the tire. So I've got my fender kind of coming, if this is the top of the tire, it comes a little bit to the right of that, and it's kind of at an angle, and I'm just gonna, it can cover a little bit of the top of the black part of that tire. So I'm just gonna kind of bring mine back in through here. It is going to go underneath this frame piece, but it's easier for me to just paint it through and then just come back on top like that. And I'm gonna have it coming down, I would say maybe just a little bit lower than here. So if you come directly over from here and then just drop it just a little bit, that can be where this fender part stops. And then I'm just, again, just bringing this down and letting it kind of overlap that tire a little bit. And then as it comes towards the bottom, it's gonna start pulling itself away from the tire just a little bit, like that. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer on here, the blue layer, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer to our handlebars. I'm going to use my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black paint. So I am just loading my brush with some black paint. I'm going to kind of just give you the idea of where I'm putting my handlebars first, then we'll do some markers, and then we'll do our base coat. So the handlebars are going to be attached to this part of the frame. So I'm going to be giving myself a little bit of a straight line in through here, and then I'm gonna give myself a diagonal line in through here. This is where the actual separation of the handlebars is going to take place, and then they're going to kind of shoot out in through here, and your handle actually are going to be in here. So it's going to look, there's going to be a lot of perspective to it. It's going to look like we're at this, looking at it from the side. So it may not make a whole bunch of sense at first when I'm giving you the markers, but once you see how it plays out, it'll make a lot more sense. So again, I'm using just black paint. You could certainly use a little bit and on the thinner side so it flows a little bit better for you. I'm going to start right here at the base, and I'm going to give myself almost a straight line. I'm kind of giving it a little bit of an angle in through here. It's going to be about 1/2 inch wide by maybe, I would say, about 1 inch or so tall. And then once I've got it in through there, I'm going to make myself a marker where I'm going to go for the next spot, which is going to be in through here. So this, for purposes of getting it kind of in a good proportion, I have it about 1 inch above my horizon line. But to know where it is in relationship to the bicycle, I have mine, if I was just to kind of travel straight down, it's right about where all of these pieces intersect in through here. So if you go straight up from there, that's going to give you a great place to put this marker of sorts for that area of the bicycle. And then I'm just going to connect that mark to this little vertical line that I had done earlier. So again, it's going to be about maybe 1/2 inch wide is how I'm making this, the width of my frame in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a couple other markers where the handlebars are going to kind of bend. So I'm having my first marker is going to be about 1 inch away from the top of my canvas. And again, to give you an idea of where that is in relationship to the frame, it's to the left from here about 1 inch. So if you come to the left of here and go straight up till you're about 1 inch away from the top of the canvas, make yourself a little bit of a marker. And then the other one is to the left of here, maybe about 1/2 inch, and down about 1 inch. So somewhere in through here is where I'm making those two markers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two markers to here with a very long sideways kind of U type shape. So here we go. I'm going to start up in through here, and my goal is to get right here with a little bit of a curve. So I'm going to go straight like this, and then start to curve it a little bit right before I get to that marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back up the other side, which is going to make me go right into this other marker up and through here. So I just made myself a long sideways U type shape. And then what I'm going to do, now that I've got those two in through there, now I'm going to make myself the actual handlebar part itself. So I'm going to take this marker here and connect it to another one that's going to be about 1 inch. I want it a little bit higher than here. So if you go up just a little bit and to the left, like that, go to the edge of the canvas and then connect these two with that diagonal type line, something like that. And then this one up and through here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm doing it at a little bit of an angle, so not much of an angle, but something like that will do. And I'm going to widen the top of this one. So I'm going to bring this like this. This is going to be where you would hold on to it. So this part's going to be wider in through here. I'm going to widen my this little frame in through here. This looks a little bit too narrow for me. So widen that a little bit. Just make sure that it looks like it would work. And just making sure that I've got it in the correct visual preference for myself. And then this one I'm going to have a little bit, maybe this one starts like about here. This is the part, again, that's going to be wider that you would hold on to. And then of course you can do any little tweaks that you want. And I am going to be utilizing, I'm going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your handlebars all nice and in place, and you can make any little adjustments that you want to make sure that they kind of look the way that you would like them to look. And sometimes stepping away and looking at them from a distance will help you to get that proper perspective on them. But once you've got them in place, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our bicycle. I'm going to be using my medium brush. If you want to, after you see what I'm going to do for this step, you could certainly utilize your medium and or your small brush. Wherever your comfort zone is totally fine. I'm going to be adding highlights and shadows and any little details that I feel will be needed to finish my bicycle. I definitely am going to be using black and white and my original bike color. But when I get to the handlebars, because they're going to be of a silvery nature, I can certainly use any color to reflect in them. So I could use some of my sky color if I wanted to, but I'll let you know how that's going to go as I get there. So what I'm going to first do is I'm starting with a touch of black and my original blue on my brush, very little of both. I'm going to start putting my shadows into place, and then I'll start adding some little details. So I'm going to put a little shadow of this frame piece right on the back end of my, or the top part of my fender, somewhere in through here. So I'm just adding a little bit of the blue and the black to make it look a little bit darker in through this area. I'm going to add a bit more black and blue on my brush to put a little bit of a shadow underneath the end of my fender down in through here. I'm going to put a little bit of black and blue. And the reason I'm using black and blue on my brush at the same time is because I want this shadow to look pretty natural. And to me, a shadow is typically going to be whatever that color is, only a little bit darker. So I'm going to have a shadow on this piece to the left. So I'm going to have it coming down in through here, and having that original color on your brush also allows you to have a nice kind of smooth transition. So I'm just kind of coming down in through here. I'm going to carry this shadow up all the way on the left side of this piece of the fender, so it skips this little piece here and then maybe comes up in through there, or piece of frame. And then you can put a little bit of shadow in your wheel itself. So if my light source is coming, you know, from up above, so to speak, I could certainly have a little bit of a shadow in through here on this blue area. I could have a little bit of highlight well, let's stick with the shadows first. So blue and my black is still my shadow. So I could have a little bit of a shadow on this side of the inside of the tire for the blue area. Let's see, where else for the blue? So I'm going to put a little bit of shadow underneath here for this part of the frame. So again, I'm just right now using blue and black, putting my shadows on the blue areas. And you can certainly, again, you make yours a little bit lighter or darker or wherever your comfort zone is. And then of course I want it to blend in with the original blue itself. So I'm just going to kind of keep working my way over the blue areas, and then I'll transition into I'm not quite sure, maybe my tire next. So that works for me on that one. I've got my shadows on all of my blue areas. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put my highlights on. Oh, I think I need a little shadow in through right underneath this little piece here too. As I'm doing it, it's like, oh wait, don't forget about that little shadow in through there. So anything, you know, on the bottom side of these shiny pieces will work. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight on my tire. So I'm going to put black and white on my brush at the same time to put a little bit of a highlight on the outside of my tire, so it looks like it's catching some of the morning sun. And of course, if you feel that you've gone too much, you just add a little bit of that black back onto your brush and get them to blend in as you go through that process. If you wanted to, you could certainly add more little highlights onto your tire by maybe adding definitely a highlight on the fender on top of your tire. This is going to get it to separate away from the water if it was in front of the water at all. So that would work in that area. I have a couple of little details that I need on my tire in through here. So this, I'm just going to put a little bit of black on my brush to get a little bit of a shadow underneath this connector piece, whatever that would be called. I'm not sure, but it's part of the frame of the bike, I guess. And in order for this to hang on and be nice and stable, I've got a little connector piece going from here to my fender. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of a line that goes like this, and it goes in front of my tire and connects in through there. Going to put a tiny bit of white paint on my brush just to give it a little bit of a highlight to make it look a little more three-dimensional, and then maybe I'll put a little black detail thing in the center and through there, pick up a little white and do a little highlight on the edge here. So really what I'm doing is I just am adding some visual information for the highlight areas. I've got my light sources up in the air and kind of to the I know my sun is over here, but I need to have some sort of light hitting this bicycle because it has contours. So these are really more the contour highlights of it as opposed to necessarily just being from the light source. So I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight on the front of this piece coming down in through here. So I've got white on my brush, but in a second I'm also going to add the blue to it so I can get it to blend into the blue area of the bicycle. So I'm just kind of pulling this back in through here to give that highlighted area on the part that I feel is kind of bumping out the most. And then once I've got that on there, I can pick up some of the original blue of the bike and get it to kind of blend in a little bit more with it. So it's not necessarily, you just got to do a line of a highlight. You're in essence kind of adding the contour to these sections of the bicycle. So I definitely have my brighter area in the direction that I want it, but then I've got to get it to kind of fade into the rest of the bicycle. So I just kind of keep tweaking this as much as I want to make sure that it reads as three-dimensional and shiny, and it's got all kinds of summer glow on it. And then I'll go ahead, once I've got my bike as highlighted as I want to, or have all the details on my bike, and you can see I just kind of keep elevating it with the white and the original blue color just to give it that extra bit of shininess. I'm going to go ahead and add In a second, I'll start working on my handlebars. Want to just add a little bit of detail in through here. That's looking pretty good, making sure I've got everywhere I wanted with the little bits of highlights and shadows. And again, just adding a little lightness here and a little darkness there can help to accentuate all of the details on it, or give it extra details to make it look more interesting or have more of a story to tell. And then I've got my handlebars. So I'm making my handlebars on the metallic shiny side. So I started with a black base. I'm going to work with black and white on my brush at the same time to give it a silvery type effect. And I know that I've got I want there to be some shine to it. So in order to create that shine, I have to be able to see dark areas and light areas. It can't just be white and make it look shiny. So I am utilizing the black and the white on my brush right now just to give it almost a gray type look, that with little spots of darkness that I will be able to illuminate with the shine and color of the stuff that's around them. So if you want something to look really shiny and make it appear as if it is reflecting the stuff around it, you have to incorporate those colors that are its neighbors, that is in its vicinity. You have to incorporate those colors on it in order to tell the viewer that it is in fact reflecting that thing that is next to it. So I definitely want it to be on the shiny side. I need so a bit of darkness on the shadow side as well, so I don't want to lose that thought. But I can, with my brush, I'm just washing and drying my brush, I can incorporate, if I want, some of those sky colors. So I could take a little bit of orange and yellow on my brush and just kind of put a bit of that up in through there, maybe a bit of it up in through here, maybe a bit in through here, which will tell the viewer that it is in fact a shiny object. I could even take some of my blue from my bike and put that in my handlebar as well, and that will help to tell the story that it is reflecting that particular object. I'm going to put a little bit of detail up in that handlebar where you're going to hold on to it. So I'm just using black and white to give myself maybe a little bit of a gray, or a gray like leather kind of look to it, which I'm going to leave a lot of the black around it. So this is just kind of giving me a couple of little details in through there. Maybe this looks shiny, maybe it looks more of a leathery kind of look to it, but you can certainly, I'm not going to incorporate any other colors in these grip parts because I don't want them to look shiny. I just want them to look like they have some black grip to them. And then you can keep fiddling with this as much as you want to. I might add little bits of highlights here and there, maybe a little extra white shine in the front to make sure it really is reading as a bright morning day. But we are gonna be using our tiny brush for the next step. So once you've got your bicycle all nice and perfected, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I think I'm gonna sign this one in the bottom left corner. I'm using my small brush. I'm using black paint. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you would like to be your identifying mark is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful beach oasis, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.